everybody, it's your friendly Robert here, and I'm back again with another Steven Universe vlog, and today's episode is pool hopping, which, as I just learned, is a sport in which you go to people's houses and jump in their pools, and then run away before the owners come out, which subsequently led to me watching at least 15 of these videos before reminding myself that I actually had to make this video. So now I'm contemplating ways that I can jump in people's pools and not get caught. But I digress. In this episode, Steven goes to the Big Donut, and Garnet's working there for some reason. In khakis, my favorite. I'm wearing my black khakis right now. It turns out that Garnet is exercising a strange new, not ability, but just like way of life, I guess, in which she goes for the unexpected. She goes for gusto. She purposefully goes to timelines, I guess, in her head, or different scenarios that she never would have envisioned. For instance, working at the Big Donut. Steven's interested by this, and they sort of go on not a rampage, but they sort of go on an adventure, finding the most ludicrous ways that they can to evade the timelines that Garnet's future vision has created for them. They buy a bunch of pizzas, sort of hand them out randomly. They end up showing up at Vidalia's house and getting painted, and while doing so, they see a cat walking outside. They start following the cat. They find the cat goes to this sort of clearing in the woods and blah, blah, blah. And then it starts raining, and Garnet starts to show a little bit of vulnerability when she starts admitting that lately she's really been upset with the way that her future vision has been acting. And Steven sort of asks what's wrong, and she goes on this spiel about how she feels like lately she's been unable to predict what's been happening, especially about Steven, because Steven's just been acting so unexpectedly lately with, Homeworld and the whole Lars and the Stars thing, and et cetera, et cetera. And you can see that this really tears Garnet up. And they sort of resolve it by going back to Vidalia's house. They adopt one of the kittens and name it Steven Jr. And Garnet sort of admits, or comes to the conclusion rather, that the reason that she's having difficulty understanding Steven is because Steven's growing up, and Garnet keeps expecting him to do childlike, immature things, but he's grown more mature now, and every time he makes a decision that reflects that maturity, it doesn't correspond with what Garnet's vision thinks of him rather, and and that's pretty much the end of the episode. But it's an interesting conclusion, and a very interesting question, if anything. It's never anything, first of all, that I would have ever thought of, and I don't think there's anybody in the audience who's ever like, I wonder what Garnet thinks of all this. But it's a strange situation that they bring up Garnet's reaction to Steven maturing, because every parent has to, as a 17-year-old kid, I am, of course, qualified in parent psychology, but every parent, obviously, comes to maybe one event or one inciting incident in their child's life where the kid acts like not a kid, and that's sort of the beginning of their stages of maturity. And I'm not going to say that I didn't expect Steven Universe to tackle that, because at this point there's nothing that Steven Universe is too afraid to tackle, so to speak. Although I don't think it'll be going for like gun legislation anytime soon, but I digress. It's a very interesting conclusion that with the character of Garnet, who is this all-knowing character who can literally see into the future, they take this see into the future ability she has, and they put a twist on it that parallels the understanding and the development of understanding, or the development of comprehension, that many parents begin to sort of realize themselves as their kids mature, as their kids grow older, and start to take on more responsibilities or make more adult decisions. And I really am at a loss for words for how to describe how effective, in all honesty, I think this episode is. But then again, there's a part of me that does say that unless you understand Steven Universe, unless you watch the show and you understand that Garnet has future abilities and you're well caught up with the entirety of what's happening, it wouldn't be as good of a metaphor. So I'm going to judge this rather as somebody who has watched, and literally his job is to watch the show and, analyze it for the YouTube. And I'll just take this as is. I won't go into the whole, if you walked into this blindfolded, you'd hate it. I think that this really is just a brilliant episode in the way that it tackles the maturity or the growth of maturity that I was just talking about. And I think the effectiveness that it has in an 11-minute time span, which, keep in mind, is maybe, I'd say the last 2 minutes of this episode are really the only time when these problems arise. If I had to compare it to anything, it would kind of be like I Remember You from Adventure Time, except I Remember You took a lot less than the last 3 minutes or so. I think it only took the last... I messed that up. I Remember You takes a good maybe 5 minutes of an 11-minute episode to start to unwrap the characters dealing with changes in their environment. And this one maybe takes about the last 2 minutes. The rest of the episode really is just goofy antics, and I don't like using the word, but it's kind of filler. Just goofy antics. It's just, funny Garnet and Steven chemistry. When's the last time we saw Amethyst and Pearl in an episode? No one? Alright. And it really just, it's nice. It's a nice episode. They don't play anything up too dramatic. The confrontation happens, or the talk at least, happens in like a nice little calm rainstorm. She's holding cats. And it's not taken with the utmost seriousness, but it's not thrown away as just childish, speak down to the kids' banter. It's definitely layered in something that if an adult was watching, who and pretty much the widest demographic right now for the show is adults. I would feel that this would be one of the episodes that they really understand, they really relate to, and this really does seem like it transcends just developing Garnet and Steven as characters, and goes on to be a sort of metaphor or maybe simile for the way that, like I said, a lot of parents deal with their children maturing and making their own decisions. And I really do find it brilliant in that way, especially considering the fact that this came right after The Big Show, which is an absolutely terrible episode. And this is the perfect parallel to The Big Show. And I'm assuming it's not. I'm assuming it's just coincidence that they're put right next to each other, but they are perfect parallels to each other. Because if you take out the last 3 minutes of this episode, it's an episode of just antics and filler. But the thing with The Big Show versus this pool hopping episode is that The Big Show focuses on chemistry between characters that we don't care enough about, and this one focuses on fun, just lighthearted. Antics between characters that we do like and who are just being goofy. And I really do like that it just this is a breathing room episode. This is a nice episode. This is just a sweet episode of just Garnet and Steven just goofing around, being a mom and a son. And if you discount the terrible inconsistencies in the characters' sizes in this episode, which I hope you will, then it really is just a very, very nice episode. And I'd say it's probably one of the best episodes of the show that I've seen tackle subject matter as mature as it is. This isn't anything like Alone at Sea about abusive relationships, or it isn't anything about accepting, people who are different than you. It's nothing that extreme. It's just a down-to-earth thing that a lot of people can relate to and understand. And I really do like that of any show, Steven Universe found a way to contextually have it be something that makes sense in the linear storyline, but also be something that you could look at and say, this can also be seen as a metaphor for blah, blah, blah. And I really do find it an effective episode. I think this one's great. I just really enjoy it, and I hope you did too. Brilliant episode. That's all I gotta say. I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Chicka chicka.